Being kicked out of home by family hits different than any stranger could manage. I'm Bruno Taylor, 69 years old, widower of 8 months after burying my wife Martha. What happened next would break her heart all over again. My son's wife decided I was excess baggage disrupting her social media business, so she threw my belongings onto the front lawn while neighbors watched. Martha's cedar recipe box sitting in the grass like common trash. But Amber made one expensive mistake. She never read the paperwork on that $85,000 business loan bearing my forged signature. 52 hours later, I walked back through that door, not as the defeated old man she had humiliated, but as the primary borrower with bank fraud evidence and legal papers that would flip her world upside down. If you're watching this, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever been dismissed because of age? Let me show you how a postal worker's filing system became the most costly lesson my daughter-in-law ever received. Because disrespecting grief has consequences. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier, but grief makes you stupid sometimes, makes you overlook things you'd normally catch. Martha died on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on me. 40 years of marriage, and she leaves on the day we first said, "I love you." I was lost. Completely lost. That's when my son Scott called. "Dad, you can't stay in that big house alone. Come live with Amber and me. We've got plenty of room." I thought it was kindness. Turns out it was opportunity. See, Scott and Amber had been house hunting for 2 years. Good credit, decent jobs, but no down payment. Properties in Mesa County were going for $400,000, and they needed $80,000 down to avoid PMY. I had exactly $340,000 from selling the house Martha and I built together. Every nail, every board, every memory for 4 decades. But Scott was my only child, and I wanted him to have what Martha and I had, a real home. So I wrote the check. March 15th, 2023. $340,000 down on a colonial at 1247 Maple Street. Put Scott's name on the deed because it'll help build his credit. Dad? Seemed reasonable. The first incident happened 3 weeks after I moved in. I was making Martha's famous pot roast. Her recipe box was one of the few things I brought from the old house. Cedar wood, 40 years of handwritten cards in her perfect cursive. Amber walked into the kitchen, saw me crying over the recipe card. "Bruno, you need to move on. This whole dead wife shrine thing is getting weird." I looked at her. "Amber, I'm just making dinner. You're living in the past." It's depressing. Scott agrees. That hurt. But I kept quiet. Kept the peace. The second incident was worse. Memorial Day weekend. I was in the garage, organizing my tools. Old habit from 30 years at the Postal Service. Everything labeled, everything in its place. Amber burst in with her phone, filming herself. "Hey, Life Glow family!" So I'm trying to film my morning routine, but unfortunately we have a situation. Some people just can't respect boundaries when you're building an empire. She turned the camera toward me. "This is my father-in-law. He's struggling with some grief issues and doesn't understand that I need quiet space for my business." I was holding Martha's picture, just looking at it. "Amber, I wasn't making noise. The problem isn't noise, Bruno. The problem is energy. Negative energy affects my content. My followers can sense these things." I watched her post that video later. Boundary, issues grief, is not an excuse building empire. 2,847 views, 93 comments, most agreeing with her. That's when I realized what I was dealing with. Amber wasn't just insensitive, she was calculating. Everything was content. My grief was content. But I still said nothing. Scott seemed happy, and after losing Martha, I couldn't bear losing him too. I started keeping records instead. Old postal worker habit, document everything. Martha always said, "Bruno, keep your receipts." Best marriage advice I ever got. So I kept receipts, every conversation, every incident, every boundary crossed. I bought a small digital recorder, Sony model, $47 at Best Buy. Fits in a shirt pocket. I started carrying it everywhere in the house. Call it paranoia. Call it preparation. But when someone treats your dead wife's memory like a business obstacle, you start thinking differently about family loyalty. You start thinking like the government employee you used to be. Methodical, careful, and always keeping documentation. Because in 30 years of postal service, I learned one thing: people lie. But paperwork doesn't. By July, I knew I had to make a decision. Stay and watch my wife's memory get monetized for social media content, or leave and lose my son forever. The financial reality was getting ugly. My teacher's pension was $2,100 a month. Social Security added another $1,847. After I paid Scott $800 for room and board, Amber's idea, I had $3,147 to cover everything else. My grief counselor cost $120 per session. Medicare didn't cover it. Dr. Patricia Williams at Mesa Valley Counseling had been helping me process Martha's death, but I was burning through $480 a month just to stay sane. Then there were my medications, blood pressure pills, cholesterol medication, the antidepressant Dr. Williams prescribed, another $290 monthly, even with Medicare Part D, car insurance, phone bill, personal expenses. By the end of each month, I had maybe $400 left. And that was before Amber started her new house rules. "Bruno, we need to talk about your financial contribution," she announced one Tuesday morning. She was setting up her ring light at the dining room table, preparing for another LifeGlow sales pitch. "I thought we agreed on $800, I said. That was before I calculated the actual impact. You use more utilities, more wear and tear. Plus, there's the emotional labor of managing your situation. Emotional labor. That's what she called my grief." "What are you suggesting?" $1,200 starting next month. Plus, you handle your own food. I can't keep supporting someone who isn't contributing to the family vision. The family vision. Everything was a business plan with Amber. $1,200 would leave me with $1,947 for everything else. Impossible. But saying no meant being homeless. At 69, starting over wasn't really an option. I'd looked at senior living facilities. The decent ones started at $3,500 a month. Assisted living was $4,800. Both required wait lists and deposits I couldn't afford. That's when I made a decision that probably saved my life. I started really digging into Amber's business empire. See, Amber wasn't just selling LifeGlow supplements. She was recruiting, building what she called her downline. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she hosted opportunity meetings in our living room. I'd sit in the kitchen pretending to read, actually listening and recording everything. The numbers didn't add up. LifeGlow supplements sold for $89 per bottle. Amber claimed she was making six figures, but I watched the mail. I saw the credit card statements Scott left on the counter. In 6 months, she'd sold exactly $1,420 in products. After her 40% commission, that was $568 for 6 months of work. But she was spending money like she'd struck oil. New iPhone, $1,200. Professional camera equipment, $2,100. Ring lights, tripods, editing software, another $800, plus inventory. She'd bought $4,200 worth of LifeGlow products that were stacked in our basement, gathering dust. The math was brutal. She was losing roughly $6,000 every 6 months on her empire. That's when I found the business loan documents. I wasn't snooping. Scott left them on the kitchen table next to my coffee cup. Apparently, Amber had been approved for funding to scale her business to the next level. $85,000 from Mesa Valley Community Bank. 12% interest. 5-year term. But here's the kicker. The part that made my postal worker brain light up like a Christmas tree. Personal guarantee clause. Page 7, highlighted in yellow. If the business defaulted, the bank could go after personal assets to recover the debt, including real estate, including our house at 1247 Maple Street, the house I'd put $340,000 down on. And who was listed as the cosigner on that personal guarantee? Bruno Taylor, primary borrower. Somehow, some way, my signature was on that document. I didn't remember signing it, but there it was. Notarized on June 3rd, 2023. I sat in that kitchen for 2 hours, staring at those papers, trying to remember. Then it hit me. Father's Day. Amber had brought me a stack of insurance papers to sign, said it was to make sure I was covered under their homeowner's policy. I'd been distracted, grieving, trusting. I'd signed a personal guarantee for $85,000 without realizing it. which meant if Amber's pyramid scheme collapsed, and the math said it would, I was liable for every penny. They could take the house. They could take my pension. They could take everything Martha and I had worked 40 years to build. But it also meant something else, something Amber didn't realize. If I was the primary borrower, I had rights, legal rights, financial rights, rights that a 30-year Postal Service veteran knows how to use. August 12th changed everything. That was the day Amber decided to host her biggest LifeGlow opportunity presentation yet. She'd invited 23 people. I know because I counted the folding chairs Scott hauled up from the basement. "Bruno, you need to make yourself scarce tonight," she announced that morning. "This is a professional event. 7-figure earners from corporate are flying in from Phoenix." 7-figure earners? From a company that sold overpriced vitamins. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Library, McDonald's. Anywhere but here. I looked at Scott. He was arranging chairs, avoiding eye contact. "Son, this is my home too." That's when Amber exploded. "Your home?" "Bruno, let's be real clear about something. This isn't your home. You're a guest here. A guest who's becoming increasingly unwelcome. I put the down payment on this house." Which was a gift. "To your son, not to you." Scott finally looked up. "Dad, maybe you could just go to a movie or something. It's just for tonight. Just for tonight." Like my presence was an embarrassment. But I had a plan. I'd been thinking about this moment for weeks. "Actually, I'd like to stay." "I'm curious about your business." Amber's face went white. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "You're always talking about opportunity. Maybe it's my opportunity too." "Bruno, you don't understand the sophistication level required for—" "Try me." She looked at Scott. He shrugged helplessly. "Fine. But you sit in the back. You don't talk. You don't ask questions. You're invisible." I agreed, but invisible doesn't mean inactive. The meeting started at 7 p.m. By 7:15, our living room was packed with 23 people, mostly women aged 25 to 45, all clutching smartphones and notebooks. The 7-figure earner turned out to be a 28-year-old kid named Travis, wearing a $200 suit and driving a leased BMW. I watched him park through the kitchen window. Travis launched into his presentation. Charts, graphs, income projections. The usual pyramid scheme mathematics where everyone gets rich and nobody does any real work. Ladies and gentlemen, LifeGlow isn't just a product. It's a movement. And tonight, you're getting ground floor access to generational wealth. I pulled out my recorder. Sony Digital, hidden in my shirt pocket. Travis clicked to a slide showing income potential. $10,000 monthly passive income in your first year. $50,000 monthly by year 3. All by sharing products you believe in with people you love. One woman raised her hand. "What about startup costs?" "Great question, Jennifer. Your investment in your future is just $2,400 for your starter pack. But think about it. If you were opening a McDonald's franchise, you'd need $500,000. This is practically free money. $2,400. I watched faces around the room. These weren't wealthy suburbanites. These were working moms, retail employees, people struggling to pay rent. Amber stood up. "I want to share my personal story. 6 months ago, I was working a dead-end job, living paycheck to paycheck. Today, I'm building a 6-figure empire from my living room." Lie number 1. Amber had never worked a day in her life. Scott supported her completely. My first month, I earned $1,200. By month 3, I was at $3,000. Last month, I crossed $8,000 in pure profit. Lie number 2. I'd seen the bank statements. Her total LifeGlow earnings were $568. But the real transformation isn't financial. It's personal. I found my purpose, my mission, my tribe. That's when she gestured toward me. Even my father-in-law, who's been struggling with some personal challenges, has seen the positive energy this business brings to our home. Every eye in the room turned to me. 23 people staring at the old man in the corner. "Bruno has been so supportive of our journey. Haven't you, Bruno?" She was putting me on the spot, making me complicit in her lies. "Actually," I said quietly, "I have some questions about the math." The room went silent. Amber's smile froze. "Questions?" I stood up slowly. "You said $8,000 profit last month. But I live here. I see the mail, the credit card statements, the inventory in the basement." Travis stepped forward. Sir, perhaps we could discuss this after. I'm curious about the $85,000 business loan. How does that factor into profit calculations? Amber's face went red. Bruno, you don't understand. I understand math. $85,000 borrowed, 12% interest. That's $850 monthly just in interest payments, before any principal. The room was deadly quiet. People were looking at each other, confused. I also understand that if this business fails, that loan comes due. All $85,000, plus accrued interest. Travis was packing up his laptop. Ladies, I think we should reschedule. And I understand personal guarantees, I continued. When the bank can't collect from the business, they collect from the guarantor's personal assets. Amber was shaking with rage. Bruno, you need to stop talking. Including real estate. Including this house. Including the $340,000 down payment that came from selling my wife's home. 3 women got up and left. Then 5 more. Within 2 minutes, 15 of the 23 attendees had walked out. Travis grabbed his materials. Amber, I'll call you tomorrow. We'll reschedule when you have your situation under control. After everyone left, Amber stood in the middle of the empty living room surrounded by folding chairs and abandoned LifeGlow brochures. You just cost me $57,600 in potential signups. I just saved 23 people from financial disaster. Scott, are you going to let your father talk to your wife like this? Scott looked at both of us. For a moment, I thought he might stand up to her. Instead, he said, Dad, that was really inappropriate. That's when I knew. My son was gone, completely under her control. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. Amber, we need to discuss the business loan. What about it? I want out. I want my name off those papers, she laughed. Bruno, you can't just get out of a signed contract. We'll see. The next morning, Amber was in damage control mode. She'd spent 2 hours on the phone with Travis, then another hour texting her upline mentors about toxic family situations affecting business growth. I was in the kitchen organizing my files. 30 years of postal service teaches you that paperwork is power. Every document has a purpose. Every signature has meaning. Bruno, we need to establish some new boundaries, she announced, not looking up from her phone. I'm listening. First, no interference with business activities. What you did last night was sabotage. I asked mathematical questions. You embarrassed me in front of industry leaders. That has consequences. She was taking photos of her LifeGlow products, arranging them like a still life painting. Content creation never stopped. Second, I need dedicated workspace. The dining room is now my office. Off limits during business hours. What are business hours? 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday. That was our dining room, where Martha and I used to eat Sunday dinners when we visited. Third, I need you to sign some additional paperwork. Insurance updates, liability protections, legal stuff. My postal worker instincts kicked in hard. What kind of paperwork? Nothing complicated, just protecting everyone's interests. I'd heard that before. June 3rd, Father's Day, when I'd unknowingly signed an $85,000 personal guarantee. I'd like to review everything with my attorney first. Amber laughed. Bruno, you don't have an attorney. Actually, I do. That wasn't entirely true, but I had something better. Connections. See, 30 years at the Postal Service puts you in touch with interesting people. We delivered mail to law offices, banks, government buildings. You get to know people. You do favors. People remember. Janet Williams had been my route supervisor for 8 years before she left to become a loan officer at Mesa Valley Community Bank, same bank that issued Amber's $85,000 business loan. I'd called Janet 3 days ago. Casual conversation. Old colleagues catching up. Mentioned I was concerned about some financial documents I'd signed without fully understanding. Bruno, bring them in. Let's take a look. Today was my appointment, but first I had some preparation to do. I went to my bedroom, Martha's and my old bedroom furniture crammed into what used to be Scott's childhood room, and pulled out my filing system. 3 banker's boxes, everything labeled, everything chronological. Box 1, house purchase documents. Deed, mortgage papers, insurance policies, tax records. Box 2, personal financial records. Bank statements, investment accounts, pension documents, medical expenses. Box 3, the interesting box, Amber's business records. See, living in someone's house gives you access to their mail. Their papers, their conversations, especially when they're careless with sensitive documents. I had copies of everything: Amber's LifeGlow application, her income claims to the bank, her social media posts showing fake earnings screenshots, her recruiting messages promising guaranteed returns. But the most interesting document was one I'd found in Scott's truck 3 weeks ago: a promissory note from Amber to someone named Marcus Henderson. $12,000 borrowed at 18% interest to fund inventory expansion. Marcus Henderson. I'd looked him up. Previous business partner, previous boyfriend, currently married with 2 kids. Amber was borrowing money from her ex to fund a business that was already $85,000 in debt. This was bigger than just MLM stupidity. This was fraud territory. I loaded everything into my truck. 2019 Ford F-150, license plate GRAMPS1, Martha's last gift to me before she got sick. The drive to Mesa Valley Community Bank took 12 minutes. I'd timed it yesterday. Janet was waiting in her office. Professional blazer, reading glasses, the same efficient smile I remembered from the Postal Service. "Bruno, you look good. How are you holding up?" "Some days better than others." "I can imagine. 40 years with Martha. That's rare these days." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "So, tell me about these documents you're concerned about." I opened the first banker's box. "Janet, I think I might have been deceived into signing something I don't understand." "Show me." I pulled out the business loan agreement. $85,000. Personal guarantee. My signature on page 7. Janet put on her reading glasses and studied the document carefully. Her expression changed. "Bruno, when did you sign this?" "That's the problem. I'm not entirely sure. August 18th, 3:45 p.m. The day everything exploded. I was coming back from my meeting with Janet Williams. The news was both better and worse than I'd expected. Better because Janet had found some irregularities in the loan documentation. Worse because those irregularities meant the bank was going to investigate, and investigations meant lawyers, and lawyers meant everything would come out. I pulled into the driveway at 1247 Maple Street and immediately knew something was wrong. There were people in my front yard, 6 neighbors, all clustered around something near the porch. As I got closer, I realized what they were looking at. My belongings. On the lawn. Not everything. Just enough to make a point. My reading chair, the recliner Martha had bought me for my 65th birthday. 3 boxes of my clothes. My toolbox, Martha's recipe box, her recipe box. Cedarwood, 40 years of handwritten cards, sitting in the grass like garbage. Mrs. Patterson from next door saw me first. "Oh, Bruno, I'm so sorry. What's happening here? Amber said you were moving to a senior facility. She asked us to help load your truck." Moving to a senior facility. News to me. I walked toward the front door. Scott was standing on the porch, looking miserable. Amber was behind him, arms crossed, filming everything with her phone. "Perfect timing, Bruno," she announced. "We need to discuss your transition plan." Transition plan, like I was a corporate reorganization. "What transition plan? You're obviously not happy here, and frankly, your negative energy is affecting my business growth. I've researched some excellent senior living options." She was still filming. I could see her screen. She was live streaming to her Instagram followers. "Amber, turn off the camera. This is my story to tell, Bruno. My journey, my growth process." Mrs. Patterson touched my arm. "Bruno, did you know about this?" Before I could answer, Amber stepped forward. "Bruno has been struggling with some behavioral issues since his wife passed. Grief can manifest in destructive ways. We're trying to get him the professional help he needs." Behavioral issues, destructive ways. She was painting me as mentally unstable. On social media, in front of my neighbors. "The truth is," she continued, speaking directly to her phone camera, "sometimes loving someone means making hard choices, even when they resist what's best for them." That's when I saw the real plan. This wasn't about senior living. This was about removing me from the house before the bank investigation started, before questions were asked about the business loan, before anyone realized I had financial rights. "Scott," I said quietly, "is this what you want?" My son couldn't look at me. "Dad, maybe it would be better. You'd have people your own age, activities, professional care, like I was dying. What if I don't want to leave? Amber laughed. Bruno, you don't really have a choice. This is our house, our life. You're disrupting our future. Our house? I put $340,000 down on this house, which was a gift to your son, not a rental agreement. The neighbors were listening to every word. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Chen from across the street, the Johnson family from the corner house, people I'd known for 8 months, people who'd brought casseroles after Martha died. Bruno, Mrs. Patterson said gently, maybe we should talk privately. No, I said. This should be public. Amber wants it public. I gestured to her phone, still recording. Let's talk about the business loan, Amber. The $85,000 loan. Her smile faltered slightly. Let's talk about who's actually liable if your pyramid scheme collapses. Bruno, you're having an episode. Let's talk about the personal guarantee. The one that puts this house at risk? Scott looked up sharply. What personal guarantee? The one your wife had me sign on Father's Day. The one that makes me responsible for $85,000 in business debt. That's not... Amber started. I just came from the bank, Amber. Mesa Valley Community Bank. Janet Williams, the loan officer, has some interesting questions about signature irregularities. Now Amber looked genuinely panicked. Bruno, you're confused. The grief medication sometimes causes... I'm not on grief medication. I stopped taking antidepressants 2 months ago. That was news to everyone, including Scott. But more importantly, Janet Williams is reopening the loan file. Full investigation. They want to interview everyone involved. Bruno, you need to leave. Now. Amber's voice was shaking. Actually, I don't think I do. I pulled out my phone. Not a smartphone like everyone else. Just a basic flip phone Martha had bought me 3 years ago. But it had Janet Williams' direct number programmed in. Janet, it's Bruno Taylor. Yes, I'm at the house now. Yes, exactly what we discussed. I could see Amber calculating, trying to figure out what Janet and I had discussed. She wants to know if you'd like to meet tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. To review the business loan documentation. Bruno, hang up the phone. She also mentioned something about FTC compliance. Apparently there are regulations about income claims in multi-level marketing. Hang up the phone. And Janet's very interested in your social media posts, the ones claiming $8,000 monthly income. She'd like to see bank statements that support those claims. Amber lunged for my phone. I stepped back. She'll email you the formal request tonight. I closed the phone. The neighbors were staring. Mrs. Patterson looked confused. Mr. Chen was taking notes. The Johnson kids were filming with their own phones. Scott, Amber said, call the police. Your father's having a mental health crisis. Actually, said a voice from the street, someone already did. Officer Martinez was walking up the driveway. Badge number 2847, Mesa County Sheriff's Department. I delivered mail to the courthouse for 15 years. I knew most of the deputies. Good afternoon, folks. We got a call about a disturbance. Officer, thank God, Amber said. This is my father-in-law. He's been acting erratically since his wife died. Today he's refused to leave our property, and he's making threatening statements about our business. Officer Martinez looked at me. Mr. Taylor, is it? I remember you from the courthouse route. How are you holding up? I've been better, Marcus. But I'm not having a mental health crisis. What's the situation here? My daughter-in-law is trying to remove me from a house I have financial interest in. She's claiming I agreed to move to senior living, but I never agreed to anything. It's his son's house, Amber interjected. Actually, I said, it's more complicated than that. I pulled out my copy of the loan documents. Officer Martinez, I'm listed as the primary guarantor on an $85,000 business loan secured against this property. The bank is investigating potential fraud. Until that investigation is complete, removing me could be considered tampering with evidence. Martinez studied the papers. Ma'am, did you know about this business loan? Of course I knew. It's my loan. But you're not listed as the primary borrower. Amber snatched the papers from his hands. Her face went white as she read page 7. This can't be. Ma'am, Bruno isn't supposed to be the primary anything. Officer Martinez looked at me, then at the belongings scattered on the lawn. Mr. Taylor, whose stuff is this? Mine. My deceased wife's recipe box is over there in the grass. Martinez walked over to the cedar box. picked it up carefully. Ma'am, I think we need to slow this whole process down. Everyone back inside, Officer Martinez said. We're going to sort this out properly. The neighbors dispersed reluctantly. Mrs. Patterson helped me carry Martha's recipe box back to the porch. Bruno, you call me if you need anything, she whispered. Inside, we sat around the dining room table. Amber's ring light was still set up from her morning content session. The irony wasn't lost on me. Let's start from the beginning, Martinez said. Mr. Taylor, you claim to have financial interest in this property? I put down $340,000 on March 15th, 2023. Here's the cashier's check copy. I pulled out my documentation. Everything organized, everything labeled. Amber was scrolling frantically through her phone. Scott, where are our house papers? What house papers? The deed. The mortgage. Something. Scott looked confused. I thought you handled all that. You thought I handled it? You signed everything. That's when I realized something interesting. Amber had never actually read the house documents either. She'd been operating on assumptions. Officer Martinez was studying my cashier's check. $340,000 from the sale of property at 891 Oak Street. That was my wife's and my home for 40 years. And you used this money to buy this house? To help my son buy this house? But I wanted to make sure my investment was protected. I pulled out the actual deed. I'm listed as joint tenant with rights of survivorship. My son is primary, but I have legal ownership interest. Scott's face went white. Dad, you never told me that. You never asked. And frankly, I trusted you to take care of everything properly. Amber grabbed the deed from Martinez's hands. This doesn't make sense. We live here. We pay the mortgage. She stopped reading mid-sentence. What is it? Scott asked. The mortgage. It's in Bruno's name. What? Primary borrower, Bruno Taylor. Secondary borrower, Scott Taylor. The room was dead quiet. That's impossible, Scott said. I signed all the papers. I remember signing. You signed as co-borrower, I said gently. Your credit wasn't good enough to qualify for the full amount. The bank required my income and assets as primary qualification. But you thought I was just helping with the down payment. I was protecting my investment. Officer Martinez was making notes. So legally, Mr. Taylor, you're the primary owner and primary borrower on this property? Correct. And the business loan? I pulled out those documents. Also lists me as primary guarantor. $85,000 borrowed against the house equity. When did you sign these papers? That's where it gets interesting. I looked at Amber. She was staring at her phone, typing frantically. Amber, who are you texting? My attorney. Your attorney? When did you get an attorney? I retained legal counsel when you started making threats about the business. Officer Martinez looked up. What kind of threats? I never made threats. I asked questions about a loan I didn't remember signing. I pulled out my final document. This morning I met with Janet Williams at Mesa Valley Community Bank. She's the loan officer who processed Amber's business loan. And Janet found some irregularities. I opened to a page marked with yellow sticky notes. First, the signature date. The business loan shows I signed on June 3rd, 2023, Father's Day. But according to bank records, I was never actually present at the bank that day. Amber stopped typing. Second, the notarization. The notary public who witnessed my signature. Her license expired in May 2023. She couldn't legally notarize anything in June. What are you saying? Scott asked. I'm saying someone forged my signature on an $85,000 loan document. The room exploded. That's ridiculous, Amber shouted. You signed those papers. I watched you sign them. When? Where? Right here. In this kitchen, remember the insurance papers? I remember insurance papers. I don't remember business loan papers. Officer Martinez was writing rapidly. Ma'am, are you saying you witnessed Mr. Taylor sign the business loan documents? I'm saying he signed papers. Multiple papers. He can't keep track of what he signs. But the bank says he was never present for the business loan signing. Then the bank is wrong. That's when my phone rang. Janet Williams. Bruno? Is this a good time? Actually, I'm here with a sheriff's deputy. Can I put you on the speaker? Please do. I activated speakerphone. Janet, I'm here with Officer Martinez, my son Scott, and my daughter-in-law, Amber. Can you share what you discovered today? Of course. Officer, this is Janet Williams, Senior Loan Officer at Mesa Valley Community Bank. I've been reviewing the business loan file for account number 4078-9635-1122. Go ahead. We have significant documentation problems. Mr. Taylor's signature appears to be forged. The notarization is invalid, and the income verification documents submitted by the applicant contain false information. Amber's face drained of color. That's impossible. Ma'am, Janet continued over the phone, you submitted bank statements showing monthly deposits of $8,000 from LifeGlow International. But when we contacted LifeGlow directly, they show total lifetime commissions paid to you of $568. There must be some mistake. We also found discrepancies in the personal guarantee documentation. The original application shows no cosigner, but the final loan papers include Mr. Taylor as primary guarantor with a backdated signature. Officer Martinez was taking detailed notes. Ms. Williams, in your professional opinion, what does this suggest? It suggests loan fraud, potentially federal fraud, since the loan amount exceeds $50,000. Amber stood up abruptly. I need to make a phone call. Ma'am, please sit down, Martinez said firmly. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But I strongly advise you to remain present while we sort this out. Scott was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Amber, what did you do? I didn't do anything. Your father is confused. The bank is confused. Everyone's confused except me. The bank isn't confused. Janet's voice came through the speaker. We have handwriting analysis. We have timeline documentation. We have recorded phone calls from when the loan was processed. Recorded phone calls? Standard procedure for loans over $75,000. Every conversation is recorded and archived. I watched Amber's face as she processed this information. Janet, I said, can you tell us what happens next? The bank is freezing the business account immediately. We're also placing a hold on any transactions related to the mortgage account, and we're required to file a suspicious activity report with federal authorities. What does that mean for the house? Scott asked. Mr. Taylor, as primary borrower and owner, you have full legal rights to the property. However, given the fraudulent loan situation, the bank may need to accelerate the business loan, meaning the full $85,000 would be due immediately. Can he pay that? Martinez asked. Not with liquid assets, but he could exercise his rights as property owner to resolve the situation through other means. What kind of other means? I looked at Amber. She was texting frantically again. Janet, if I wanted to remove someone from the property to protect my investment, what would be the legal process? Standard eviction procedure. 30-day notice for month-to-month tenancy. Given the fraud situation, you'd have strong legal grounds. Amber's phone slipped from her hands. Eviction? Scott whispered. Son, you're always welcome here. This is about financial fraud, not family. But Amber committed fraud. Against me, against the bank, against federal regulations. Officer Martinez closed his notepad. Ms. Williams, thank you for the information. We'll follow up with formal statements tomorrow. Of course. Bruno, I'll have the paperwork ready by end of business today. I hung up the phone. The room was silent except for the sound of Amber crying. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she whispered. How was it supposed to go? I asked. You were supposed to be the confused old man. I was supposed to be the successful businesswoman. You were supposed to die or move away, and Scott and I were supposed to inherit everything. Scott stood up slowly. Inherit everything? Amber, my father isn't dead. But he's old and sad and useless, and he was ruining everything. The mask was completely off now, the social media persona, the fake business confidence, the manipulative sweetness, all gone. What was left was a 30-year-old woman who'd gambled everything on a pyramid scheme and lost. Officer Martinez stood up. Mr. Taylor, what would you like to do here? I looked around the dining room, Martha's china cabinet in the corner, the table where she and I used to eat Sunday dinners, the window where she'd watch for my truck to come home from work. I'd like to file a formal complaint about the loan fraud. And the property situation? I'll handle that through proper legal channels. I turned to Scott. Son, I love you, but I won't be disrespected in a house I own by a woman who stole from me. Dad, you have a choice to make, Scott. You can stand with your wife while she faces federal fraud charges, or you can stand with your family. Amber was sobbing now. Scott, you can't let him do this to us. To us? Amber, you forged my father's signature on an $85,000 loan. I was trying to build our future by stealing from my father. Officer Martinez gathered his things. I'll file the initial report tonight. Mr. Taylor, someone from the fraud division will contact you tomorrow. After he left, the three of us sat in the dining room under Amber's ring light. What happens now? Scott asked. I pulled out my phone and called Janet Williams back. Janet, it's Bruno. I'd like to proceed with the eviction paperwork. How soon do you need it? I looked at my watch. 5:15 p.m. Tomorrow morning. I'll have everything ready by 8 a.m. Amber looked up from her hands. 52 hours. What? You said 52 hours in your opening. It's been exactly 52 hours since you left this house. I smiled for the first time in months. Martha always said I was good with numbers. 9:47 a.m. August 20th. I pulled into the driveway at 1247 Maple Street in my blue Ford F-150, license plate GRAMPS1. But this time, I wasn't alone. Janet Williams sat in the passenger seat, briefcase full of legal documents. Behind us, Officer Martinez followed in his patrol car, and behind him, a white van from Pinnacle Process Serving. 52 hours and 2 minutes after being humiliated on my own front lawn, I was returning as the legal property owner with federal fraud evidence and an eviction notice. The front door opened before we reached the porch. Scott stepped out, looking like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Dad, we need to talk. We can talk after the paperwork is served. Please, she's not handling this well. Through the window, I could see her pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear, still trying to find a way out. Janet Williams stepped forward with her briefcase. Mr. Taylor, shall we proceed? Let's do this properly. Officer Martinez joined us on the porch. Behind him, the process server, a professional-looking woman in her 40s carrying official county documents. Scott, please call Amber outside. Dad, son, this is happening whether she comes out or we go in, but she should receive this with dignity. Scott disappeared inside. We could hear raised voices, then crying, then more raised voices. Finally, Amber appeared in the doorway. Her Instagram-perfect appearance was gone. No makeup, hair unwashed, wearing yesterday's clothes. Bruno, please, we can work this out. We tried working it out. You chose fraud instead. The process server stepped forward. Are you Amber Nicole Taylor? Yes. I'm serving you with multiple legal documents. She handed Amber a thick envelope. First, a 30-day notice to vacate these premises. You are being evicted for cause. Amber's hands were shaking as she took the papers. Second, a subpoena to appear before Mesa Valley Community Bank regarding fraudulent loan documentation. Another envelope. Third, notice that you are under federal investigation by the Federal Trade Commission for violations of multi-level marketing regulations. A third envelope. And finally, notice that criminal charges are being filed for loan fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The fourth envelope was the heaviest. Amber sank down onto the porch steps. This isn't happening. Janet Williams opened her briefcase. Mrs. Taylor, I also need to inform you that as of 8 a.m. this morning, all accounts associated with your business have been frozen, pending investigation. What accounts? Your LifeGlow business checking account, your personal savings account, the joint account with your husband. Scott looked up sharply. Our joint account? Any account that received deposits from fraudulent business activities is subject to asset forfeiture. How much money are we talking about? Scott asked. Janet consulted her paperwork. The business account contained $347. The savings account contained $1,200. The joint account contained $8,900. $8,900? Scott stood up. Amber, where did that money come from? Amber was crying too hard to answer. I pulled out my own documentation. Some of it came from the business loan. $12,000 was withdrawn in cash on July 15th. $12,000 in cash? For what? Inventory purchases, according to the withdrawal slip. But I haven't seen $12,000 worth of new inventory. Officer Martinez was making notes. Mrs. Taylor, can you account for the cash withdrawal? Amber looked up with mascara streaking her face. I needed to pay back Marcus. Who's Marcus? Scott asked. My business partner. From before. Your business partner or your ex-boyfriend? Silence. Amber, answer me. Both. Scott sat down hard on the porch railing. You used fraudulent loan money to pay back your ex-boyfriend? It wasn't like that. What was it like? He loaned me money to start LifeGlow. I had to pay him back or he was going to tell his wife. The whole sordid picture was finally coming together. Amber hadn't just committed loan fraud. She'd been running multiple financial schemes simultaneously. Janet Williams was still reading from her papers. Mrs. Taylor, the bank also discovered unauthorized charges on the business credit line. What charges? $2,100 to Apple for iPhone purchases, $1,400 to Ring Technologies for lighting equipment, $890 to Nordstrom for business wardrobe. Those were legitimate business expenses. For a business that earned $568 in total revenue. Officer Martinez closed his notepad. Mrs. Taylor, I need you to understand the seriousness of your situation. You're looking at potential federal fraud charges, prison time, asset forfeiture. But I didn't mean, ma'am, intent doesn't matter when you forge signatures on federal loan documents. I walked over and sat down next to Amber on the steps. Amber, I want you to listen carefully. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. You disrespected my wife's memory. You tried to steal my home. You committed fraud using my name. You humiliated me in front of my neighbors. Bruno, I'm sorry, but I'm not trying to destroy your life. I'm trying to protect what's left of my own. I gestured to the legal papers scattered around her feet. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. You have legal representation options for the federal charges. And you have the opportunity to make this right by cooperating with the investigation. What do you mean? Help the FBI track down other victims. Help the FTC shut down the LifeGlow pyramid scheme. Help recover money for the people you recruited. Scott was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Amber, how many people did you recruit? I don't know, maybe 30? 30 people lost money because of you? They weren't supposed to lose money. They were supposed to get rich. With a product that costs $89 and sells for $89, where was the profit supposed to come from? Amber had no answer. Janet Williams packed up her briefcase. Mr. Taylor, the bank will contact you about restructuring the mortgage situation. With the business loan in default, we'll need to modify the payment terms. I understand. Officer Martinez headed back to his car. The detective assigned to the fraud case will call you this afternoon. As the official vehicles pulled away, the three of us sat on the porch in silence. Finally, Scott spoke. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have protected you. Son, you were trying to save your marriage. I understand. By letting my wife steal from my father? You didn't know she was stealing. I should have known. We sat there for another few minutes, watching Mrs. Patterson water her flowers across the street. Normal suburban life continuing around our family disaster. What happens now? Scott asked. I looked at my son, then at his wife. Now we figure out how to rebuild what we can. 3 weeks later, the full scope of Amber's business empire became clear. The FBI fraud investigation revealed she'd recruited 34 people into her LifeGlow downline. Total losses, $87,400. Average loss per victim, $2,570. But LifeGlow was just the beginning. Detective Sarah Morrison called me on September 12th with updates that kept getting worse. Mr. Taylor, we've discovered your daughter-in-law was involved in multiple schemes simultaneously. What kind of schemes? She was running a credit repair business without proper licensing. Charged people $500 up front to fix their credit, then did nothing. How many victims? 14. Total losses around $7,000. What else? Online coaching business. Life transformation courses for $1,200 each. Promised guaranteed income, guaranteed happiness, guaranteed success. Any actual results? We haven't found any satisfied customers yet. The math was staggering. Amber had scammed roughly $110,000 from ordinary working people while living in a house I'd bought and eating food I'd helped pay for. But the consequences were swift and thorough. On September 15th, the Federal Trade Commission shut down the entire LifeGlow operation. 847 distributors nationwide lost their inventory investments. The company's top earners, The ones who'd flown in for Amber's opportunity presentation were facing their own federal charges. Travis, the 28-year-old seven-figure earner, turned out to be living in his mother's basement and driving a leased BMW he couldn't afford. The FBI seized the car, along with $34,000 in cash he'd hidden in a storage unit. Amber's social media presence imploded overnight. Instagram suspended her account for fraudulent business practices. Her 2,847 followers discovered that her success posts were staged with rented props and borrowed money. The lifestyle content she'd been creating, all evidence in a federal fraud case. But the most devastating consequence was social. Mrs. Patterson stopped by on September 18th with a casserole and some uncomfortable news. "Bruno, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but people are talking." "What are they saying?" "Some of the neighbors lost money in Amber's schemes. The Hendersons invested $2,400 in her credit repair business. The Johnsons paid $1,200 for her life coaching course. My neighbors, people I'd lived near for 8 months, people who'd brought meals after Martha died. Mrs. Patterson, I had no idea." "Oh, we know you didn't know, Bruno." "But Scott, some people are wondering how much he knew." That was the question that kept me awake at night. How much had my son known? I got my answer on September 22nd. Scott came to the house, our house, with a banker's box full of papers. "Dad, I found these in the basement." Hidden behind Amber's inventory, inside the box, bank statements showing cash deposits totaling $23,000 over 6 months. Money that had never appeared on any tax returns or business records. "Scott, where did this money come from?" "I think she was skimming cash from her victims, taking their payments and depositing them into secret accounts." "Did you know about these accounts?" "I swear I didn't." "But Dad, there's more." He pulled out a notebook, Amber's handwriting, pages of calculations and victim lists. "She was planning to leave?" "Leave. Take the money and disappear. There are flight searches to Costa Rica, research about countries without extradition treaties. My daughter-in-law hadn't just been running scams. She'd been planning to abandon my son and flee the country with stolen money." "Scott, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For being right about her." He sat down in Martha's old chair, the one I'd rescued from the front lawn. "Dad, I have to ask you something." "Anything." "When you called Janet Williams that first time, when you started investigating the loan, did you already know what you'd find?" I thought about that question for a long moment. "Son, I didn't know the details, but I knew something was wrong." "How?" 30 years of postal service teaches you to spot fraud. The inconsistencies, the stories that don't add up, the desperation disguised as confidence. "You could have told me." "Would you have listened?" He smiled sadly. "Probably not. I had to let you discover it yourself. Had to let the evidence speak. And if I'd chosen her over you, then I'd have lost my son. But I'd have kept my dignity." On September 28th, Amber was formally indicted on 14 federal charges. The trial was scheduled for February 2024. Her court-appointed attorney estimated she was facing 8 to 12 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. Scott filed for divorce on October 3rd. The house at 1247 Maple Street was finally peaceful. I could make Martha's pot roast without being told I was living in the past. I could display her photo without being accused of negative energy. And every morning I walked to the mailbox and nodded to Mrs. Patterson, who always waved from her garden. Some neighbors still avoided eye contact, but most understood the difference between the victim and the perpetrator. Justice, it turned out, was a slow-moving river, but it eventually reached the sea. December 15th, 4 months after the eviction notice. I was in the kitchen making Christmas cookies from Martha's recipe when Scott knocked on the front door. "Dad, can we talk?" He looked better, healthier. The constant stress of living with a criminal had lifted from his shoulders. "Come in, son. Want some coffee?" "Actually, I want to ask you something." We sat at the dining room table. No ring light, no camera equipment, just father and son. "Dad, I want to move back in." I'd been expecting this conversation. "Scott, this is your home. It's always been your home, but I need to do it right this time." "What do you mean?" He pulled out a folder, legal documents, properly prepared. "Rental agreement, fair market rent, Defined responsibilities, clear boundaries. I looked through the papers. Professional, thorough, respectful. Scott, you don't need to pay me rent. Yes, I do. I need to contribute. I need to earn my place here instead of assuming I deserve it. That was the son I'd raised. The one who'd been buried under years of manipulation and entitlement. What about your divorce? Finalized last week. Amber gets nothing. I keep nothing. We start over separately. Any regrets? Only that I let her hurt you. I reached across the table and took his hand. Son, marriage makes you do stupid things sometimes. I know. I was married for 40 years. He laughed. First time I'd heard him laugh in over a year. Did you and Mom ever fight about money? Every month for the first 5 years. She wanted to save everything. I wanted to spend everything. Took us a while to find balance. How'd you figure it out? We realized we were fighting for the same thing. Security. Just had different ideas about how to get it. Scott signed the rental agreement. 6-month renewable lease. $800 monthly rent. Shared utilities. Respect for each other's space and boundaries. Dad, there's one more thing. What's that? I want to help you organize Mom's recipes. Maybe we could learn to cook some of her dishes together. I felt tears starting, but they weren't sad tears this time. She'd like that. And Dad? Yes? Thank you for not giving up on me. Son, I'd never give up on you. But I won't sacrifice my dignity for anyone ever again. That's a boundary I learned the hard way. I understand. That evening, we made Martha's famous pot roast together. Scott handled the vegetables while I managed the meat, just like Martha and I used to do. Some boundaries protect you from harm. Others protect your ability to love without losing yourself. Both kinds matter. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your dignity? I'd love to hear your story.